Carolyn Wilson is no stranger to talking about her experiences going through childhood sexual assault. This podcast is something that will unfortunately relate to so many people. I know through statistics that a lot of listeners will have experienced sexual assault throughout their lives, some as children, some as adults, and yet each person who has gone through this particular type of trauma will relate to parts of this discussion. So although this is a sensitive topic, sometimes considered taboo, that is the very reason why Carolyn and I had this discussion and want to make sure that more people are aware of some of the forms that sexual abuse comes in, is disguised as, is manipulated through children in particular, and so that people have the opportunity to start to become aware of recognising some of the signs. I bring to you Carolyn Wilson. Have you ever had one of those gut-wrenching moments where life ground you to your knees and you found yourself asking in despair, why me? This podcast is all about sharing your stories and journeys, from asking why me to declaring this is why me. Discover how ordinary human beings like you and I have found their extraordinary levels of hope, courage, compassion, and provided a new perspective for greater potential and self-empowerment during their darkest defining moment. As a creative artist and coach myself, my guests and I discuss the interconnectedness of emotion and transformation in those moments, and how their actions then seize the opportunity for discovering their unfiltered and authentic voice, and ultimately their life's purpose. I invite you to join me each week as we share insights into how adversity can be turned into a unique advantage. Today's guest is Carolyn Wilson, founder of Magnify Your Essence and author of Magnify Thoughts. She is an award-winning filmmaker of The Good Life, and she is here today to share with us a moment in time where she asked herself that question, why me? Welcome to the WhyMe podcast, Carolyn.
Thank you, Vera. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Every time I hear my little introduction, I have to go, is that me?
It certainly is you, and I love that. And I love that, you're still going on this journey, and that's the thing that we all can get lost sometimes with, is that life is such a journey, isn't it? It doesn't really have an end.
No.
We're here living it.
It continues. The journey continues.
It does.
It definitely continues. It's ongoing. It's kind of like you never actually reach your destination. It's almost like you have pit stops or rest stops, on this long journey. And this kind of, you get here and you rest, you stop. You might do a little sightseeing, you might decide to change routes. It's just ongoing. Like the roads, there's no end of the road.
Yeah, it's so true.
There's no end of the road. Yeah. You just turn around and find a different one.
Yeah. And we have that choice, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. It's so ironic that this timing is now, right? So my defining moment was when I realized my strength.
Mm-hmm.
My strength that I had within that I didn't know that I had, the courage that I had. And that all boiled down to 7 years ago. 7 is a very powerful when you think about numbers. So 7 years ago, I had a shift. I'm just going to call it lightly a shift in my atmosphere that just kind of rocked me, where my past trauma it got unearthed. I had buried it, like threw away the key, had the funeral, had the repast, had the everything, right?
Mm.
And because what it was is I was molested by my father when I was a child. So I was molested all the way up until about 14. So all of my formative years, pretty much that's what was what. So, and that's why I said my grandma was a very intriguing, because she kind of added some balance in my life where there was other things that were lacking. You know, my mother was sick all the time. So it was because he had access to me, because she always worked. He really didn't. I'm starting to understand the dynamics of their relationship. It was more so of a controlling, relationship, where, it was, he was just there. She did everything. So when my grandmother was able to step in and give me some sort of foundation. So she was able to do that. She was able to do that. So we had bits and pieces where the abuse stopped for a second because he didn't have access to me, and then he regained access to me. And then, so but my grandmom still was that rock solid. So, fast forward a little bit, when I was 17, she's the one that I told when I finally decided to, have this courage and just tell. And she said, so what do you want to do about it? And I said, well, she said, you want to call the police? I said, yeah. She said, okay, let's do it. So she rode with me. And we went to, the SVU, Sexual Victims Unit here in the States, in Philadelphia. And I reported it. And it was like, okay. And that was the beginning of the end.
Can I ask you a question just before we go on? Because I think it's really important for our viewers to understand how, after so many years of this going on, how did you get to that point of knowing that you needed to speak up and report this? Because that is a huge, huge moment in anyone's life who's been molested, abused in any way sexually. That is the moment when everything changes.
Yeah, it is. And to be quite honest, it was a moment with my boyfriend at the time. And it was, I was uncomfortable with it, about something. I can't remember what it was or how the conversation got engaged, how we started the conversation. But, I was 17, he was 17. You could probably put two and two together.
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think I just got really uncomfortable. And he probably was like, what's wrong? And I just told him. And it was something that I wanted to tell for a long time, but I just didn't, I wanted to tell when I was 15, like I wanted to tell when I was 14. I wanted to tell, like, I just wanted to always tell.
Yeah.
And I just didn't. I just got so accustomed to and used to just keeping my mouth shut and just pretending that it goes away. You know what I mean? So just kind of falling back and just kind of like, okay, so maybe you'll leave me alone. Okay, if I just, maybe I can wish this away. Like I'm dreaming this, I'm imagining this, right? And then I said, it'll be over soon, that type of thing, not to be graphic for people, but this is kind of the thought process. So because of that thought process is what was ingrained and embedded into me, where I just never talked about it. Like even to the point where I had, there was an after school special that me and my grandmother were watching, and it was on a young girl who was being molested by her father or uncle or somebody in the house, the boyfriend, something like that. And I felt so uncomfortable. And then she's like, oh, wow, that's awful. And I'm going, yeah, that's a shame. Like I had to just pretend that wasn't me. But on the inside, I was screaming like, that's me. That's happening to me. That's happening to me. That happened to me. Like I was on the inside just screaming, and there was a lot of me screaming on the inside.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't come out. And so I would say that being able to finally just feel safe enough to just tell one person. And then that gave me the, okay, all right, well, I told you. And then they encouraged me, said, well, you got to tell your mom, you got to tell. And I'm like, tell my grandma. So, and then that kind of, then that prompted, so what do you want to do? Do you want to go to the police? Because I didn't know what to do. I just want to tell. Do you want to go to the police? Yeah. Okay. And so I think just being able to just find that one person that you can just really safely confide in and release and tell something. I think that's the start. That's the beginning of the window. And so, and the reason why I said, but thank you, that was a really, really good question, because that is a pinnacle moment. And I don't really remember that moment as much as I do the most recent one, where, really speaking up about, your past trauma. So that 17-year-old that got the courage, right? You got to paint this picture, finally got the courage after years, because the abuse pretty much stopped when I was 14, because the access was there was no longer access to me, one-on-one access. So, but there was still interaction. There was still, by that point, I already knew what, all of this was, so inappropriate. And by that point, I had lost respect for him, for my mom, just kind of everybody. So, when you wonder why kids act the way they act, there's usually a reason behind it.
Yes.
There's some reason. Now, I wasn't a bad kid, and not by any means, but at the same token, I wasn't a happy kid, right? And, I could have had a little bit of an attitude or a mouth, especially to those two, those two.
Can I just ask another question here? Because this story that you're starting to share with us is a story that so many people can relate to. And there are so many nuances about these situations. It's, did your mother know? These are questions that people are going to be thinking straight away. Did your mother know? Now, you've just said to us that, you were holding this resentment against him and against her. So if you hadn't been able to tell her, do you think that she knew?
That it didn't dawn on me until recently. That's why I say this stuff is ongoing. Like the healing is ongoing. The process is ongoing. Like I have a better understanding from my mother. And it really just dawned on me that I really did have a resentment for my mother, and I didn't realize it.
Right.
Because it wasn't as obvious as it was for my father. So, because I love my mother, like clearly, like, but there was some, I can really attest that it was some maybe little defiant moments, with my mother, and just not that connection that a mother and daughter should have. And I blamed it partially on her because she was ill. She had epilepsy. So she was always on this one medication that just always kept her really tired. And she did factory work. So her schedule had it where she was gone in the morning when I got up. And then when I got home, if I didn't do any type of extra curricular activity, then it was a really short window of opportunity where she was still awake for me to really engage with her, just to say, hey, or for her to just kind of stay up barely to make sure I ate. And then she had to go to sleep because she had to get up and leave early to go to work. So that was pretty much the dynamic. So hence why I said my grandmother, because we lived with my grandmother. So when my mother left my father, so that was kind of like my foundation. Right. My grandmother was able to fill in the gap. So I'm very blessed and lucky that was the case for me. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. So, like I said, painting this picture, that 17-year-old, because once the 17-year-old was able to now share, what has happened, and now it just kind of left the 17-year-old like, okay, so now what do I do? Now what? And I didn't know what else to do. I just told. And now you think everything is going to be like better. And it just got really confusing because now my mother she didn't believe and she didn't agree. So I don't know where she was in this space of disbelief and denial-ish and wasn't really comprehending what stuff was. But she may have known and just wasn't able to say anything. I don't know. I can't speak for my mother. My mother's now since deceased. But at the same token, it's like, and that's when I realized, I think why I had a little discontent from my mother, because there was an incident where she was standing right next to him and he was being inappropriate with me. And I'm like looking at her like, you gonna let him do this? And I think that was the point where I'm like, well, you're not even protecting me.
Right.
So I think, and that was a subconscious thing, not even a conscious thing. And it didn't dawn on me until just recently, because I was, asking and praying for the universe to kind of like help me believe some of this other subconscious stuff, the residue that's still there. Even after processing the stuff, even after healing, even after, removing the layers. So like I said, that 17-year-old, they sent the 17-year-old out in the world, like a lot of us, they just send us out in the world. with nothing. So I at least told, but nothing happened. So why even tell? Nothing happened. We never went to court. I never went to counseling. I remember all of those things were supposed to be set up, but you got to remember I was 17. So all of the information would have went to my mother.
Yeah.
And if there was a controlling type of demeanor between her and my father, then she would not have adhered by anything that the courts or anything else would. She would have adhered by what he was requesting.
Right.
So therefore, I never went to counseling. We never went to court. It just went away. He stopped coming around. My mother started being heartbroken. I'm like, I don't know what to do, at this point. So I just pretty much went on with my life. I searched, but it was still something there, right? It was like,
yeah,
I need answers. I need something to be done. Like now I'm like, okay, no, we need to do something. Something needs to be done. Like this wasn't right. So I was searching for years. And I would say it was probably 6 to 7 years because I was 17. And I think by the time I was 23, about 22, 23, something like that, I finally had to make a decision. And that was, okay, Carolyn, do you continue to fight a battle that you can't see? Ironically, like what we're doing now, right? We're fighting a battle we can't see.
Correct.
or do you just close that door and just move on because you're not getting anywhere? Now, mind you, I did this for like almost 7 years. Now, it wasn't continuously, but it was something that was always there. So, and I just remember the door always being shut, the door always being closed, like, that the statute of limitation is over. You were 18. Oh, that building doesn't exist any longer. Oh, we can't find the files. Oh, like there was always something that I could never find an answer. And I knew where I went. I knew everything. And they knew. It's like, that's where it was, but we don't, so no one could help me piece this stuff together because, oh, it's too old. Yeah, so you're now, once again, you're devaluing me. You're not giving me the opportunity to now speak my truth. So once again, now, not only did you victimize and re-traumatize that 17-year-old, not giving her, after she finally got the courage to say something, now you discredited her voice. And then over the years, when you're going to find out this more information to really bring it back to the surface, to say, whatever happened, like, and that was my question, whatever happened? All I know is I was supposed to go to court and I never did. What happened? I needed answers and no one can give them to me. So I was searching for that for years. And like I said, I just had to just eventually make a decision. And I think that's what a lot of us do. We have to get to that point and we just say, you know what, forget it. And I buried it. I said, okay, I'm not going to give this power over my life any longer because I was still having nightmares. I was still, like it was really consuming me and it was impacting my life. See, but if the thing is now, what I know now is that I probably was right there at the edge of it. I just had to keep going. Like, and that's what happens in life. We get so close to stuff and we get frustrated and we just stop. But if you keep going and just be persistent, you're going to get there. Like you're going to get to that. Maybe it's that rest stop. You're going to get there. You're going to get that map. You're going to get the directions that you need. So like I said, so then I just kind of buried it and it was done and it was over with. And I lived my fabulous trauma-filled life, right? Full of, and trauma after trauma after trauma. So what that did is that, set a new foundation for, domestic violence, for the controlling relationships. Ironically, even the same boyfriend that allowed me to speak my truth turned into a violent relationship.
Wow.
And then, so now what does that do to my self-esteem, right? The person who helped me still is the one that hurt me, right? So it's like, oh man, how do you do that? So it's just so much trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And I just lived in that for years, but yet kept going because I couldn't control that. But what I could control was, me. Yes. And that was, giving back. For me, service was a lot. I gave back. I did a lot for different organizations, going back to school, making sure my kids, being a mom and just focusing on what I could, that's what built me up and gave me a little bit more strength. So, but when you get to that point and now you've see that this is just a proof that when you're empty inside, we think that we can fill it with all these void fillers, with titles, with accolades, with jobs, with prestige, with clothing, with assignment, so we're seeking something to fill this void. And yet I had all of these things, but yet I still felt empty inside. I still felt like there was something missing. I still felt like something's not right. Like, how is it that I have, if we have to put it on a scale, like how is it my accolades and all the things I've accomplished are so like way up here, but I feel like I'm way down here. Like I don't even belong. I'm just kind of stuck in limbo. I don't feel like I belong here. And I'm in places and spaces where a lot of times I was the only woman. I was the only woman of color. I was in high places, making decisions, making important decisions. And yet I'm there. And yet I'm broken. And yet I'm making decisions for people who looked like me and was in the same situation as me. And I was still in those situations, right? You have to read between the lines. And just kind of being just still not really understanding my value and my worth, being in those spaces. But then I couldn't go back to my old spaces because I didn't relate to those spaces any longer either, because I didn't allow myself to stay in those spaces. I'm like, I can do better. I can come out of this. And I think that's what built me up. It's kind of like these different stones, like, like you build a wall. Yes. And I just kind of did little things to build me up when I think about how I was able to get this strength. So when this thought kept coming up and I'm like, I have to figure out my life because something's missing. When you keep asking that question and you keep asking that question, you keep seeking it and trying to figure it out, the universe hears you and the universe will give it to you. And so now stuff kept coming up and I'm not dealing with that right now. I didn't want to deal with it. Stuff with my dad kept popping up. I was like, I don't want to deal with it. Like the house that my grandfather had, my father had it. And then he lost the house. My cousin was a realtor. She's like, you can go get the house. I was like, I don't want it. She's like, it's property. I was like, I don't want it. Right about now, I'd have took the property, but I'm just saying, like, I'd have took the property because property is property. Yes. But because that's the state I was in, I was like, correct. I don't want to parts because that made me have to deal with him and deal with that. I didn't want it. So it wasn't just the house. It was me dealing with that. And I couldn't get my brain to wrap around that notion. So
at that point in time,
that point in time, exactly. So now, you fast forward a little bit, still making my accolades, still doing things, but still feeling like there's a disconnect. Something's still off. And then it's like, it just kind of like fell in my lap. And it's like, okay, you said you wanted to work on this. You said you need to address this. And it's funny how we go full circle. Because yes. I asked the question, here we go again. I asked the question to the one who helped me, then the one who later hurt me, who then turned back to help me.
Did he?
Yes, who then turned back to help me. So that's called forgiveness, right? Mm-hmm. So forgiveness has power. So now when I was in a space where it's like, okay, I'm still trying to find these answers. And I'm like, well, maybe he can help me. I asked him. And he was like, so I don't have the answer to that. He said, did you ever go like deal with the stuff that happened to you with your dad? And I was like, no. He said, I think you really need to deal with that. He said, because apparently you done dealt with me already. And you done dealt with your daughter, father, like the domestic violence stuff. I definitely dealt with that. Mm-hmm. But I never went back to the source and dealt with that because I had the funeral. It was dead. It was gone. Mm. And so I was like, I took his word for it. I said, okay, all right. And so we definitely have a different relationship now. We definitely understand the dynamics, the age we were, our family dynamics. So we have a better understanding, and it's called maturity, and it's also called forgiveness. It's the power of forgiveness, and it's the power of the apology. Right.
And not just the forgiveness, the understanding that you can forgive and remember. So you don't need to forget. Some people
Right.
feel that if they forgive, it's like it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you can truly accept forgiveness and give forgiveness and still know what happened.
And know what happened and have an understanding, not know in a way that is going to tarnish you again.
Yes.
Like it's going to give a bad seed, and you're just going to remember.
Yes.
But and it's just, you're just going to remember. That's all. And it's not a bad thing. You're just going to remember, and you're going, okay, now I recognize what that is.
Yes, it's an experience.
It's an experience. I just recognize what that is.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you don't hold that against anyone in the future. But a lot of times we do. We hold that against someone else. We give someone else's narrative before we get a chance to even pick up.
I love that. That's a beautiful quote, and it is so true. And I would like to just explore a little bit about the dynamics of when this happens within the family. And statistics show that most sexual assaults happen by a family member for the very reasons that you explained of the ease of access.
Right.
And here you are as a child, and this can happen to anybody at any age.
Right.
So it happened to me in my marriage. I was an adult. I was a fully functioning, well-rounded, as people would explain, adult. And yet I found myself being sexually assaulted by my husband. You were a child and you found yourself being assaulted by your father. These are people that we love. And that is something I'd like you to talk a little bit about, because that is one of the reasons that this is so complex, that this is so difficult at the time to talk about, because you have this dichotomy of, but I love this person, but this is what they're doing to me. This feels wrong, and yet this person is caring and protecting of me, aren't they? So it's all of that confusion.
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was confusion. That's literally the best word for confusion, because how is it that you just have this infinity, like you have an infinity, especially a daughter with her father, right? That's like the ultimate relationship, a daughter with their father. And so I remember growing up and just being upset, like, where's my daddy? Like, I wanted my daddy. Like, is my daddy hurt? Like, it's raining really bad outside. I don't want to get in an accident. Like, just loving my daddy, right? Because I was younger, even though I was being abused, but I didn't know. I just thought he loved me, like that's how he showed me love. Like, even to the point where I remember one of the, and this was a badge of shame on myself, that I remember asking him to perform on me because it felt good. I mean, I'm a kid. I'm like 5. And I remember because the nickname was TT. So for those people, tell your children what the real name is. So because I could get away and say my TT and no one knew what TT meant.
Yeah.
My TT was my vagina. So I remember saying, hey, I was like, can you lick my TT today? And he's like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And I felt so like, I felt rejected, because I'm like, well, we do this all the time. Like, I didn't understand. And so at that age, at like 5 or 6, I was heartbroken because he told me no. And it's something that we did all this time. And why not? I'm like, it kind of feels good. Like, okay, like, because I'm a kid. I didn't know. But it wasn't until I got older and I was like, oh man, I asked him. So now it's shame, right? Like, I asked for it. I was like, oh God. And now, now you're a teenager, you're developing. And once again, you're human. So I'm trying to fight urges and feelings, because it's feelings. Trying not to respond because of a feeling, but I know that it's wrong, and I know that's why you disconnect. Yes. That's why you disconnect. You disconnect, and it's like, okay, I feel nothing any longer. Now I'm just numb. Now it's like, I don't even know you're here. Now it's kind of like, okay, are you done? Like, okay, we're done. Okay, good. And now I just don't know what to do. Now I'm just empty. So, and that can carry on into, the other relationships, because that was the case. I just felt empty. Like, I wasn't able to experience any of that because it came with shame. It came with hurt. It came with confusion, right? It just came with a lot of stuff. So, getting to And then easily, like you said, getting into, sexual assault, even within the confines of a relationship, that happened to me as well. That happened to me as well, because now you don't really truly know what boundaries are. You don't understand what they are. You only know what you've been taught and what you've been shown, right?
Yes.
So you mirror and you repeat the actions and what's been displayed for you, right? So, like I said, so when I got to be in my teenage years, when I started like, okay, that wasn't cool. You wasn't be doing that stuff. Like, so it was that. And then you're not even here. And then I just disrespected him because I see my mother doing all of this stuff barely. And then you're taking the credit and you're controlling the household from afar. Like he wasn't even in the household and he was putting me on punishment. He was telling my mother where I can go, what I couldn't do, what I could do, who I could see, who I couldn't see, until my grandmother put her foot down and says, he's not even here. Like my grandmother continuously spoke up for me, where my mother didn't.
What a warrior, really.
Yeah. So, to the point where, prom, I couldn't go on a prom. Well, you're going to have to ask your father. My grandmother was like, that man don't live here. Like, let that girl go on that prom. That boy asked on the prom, you're going to let her go on the prom. Right. But for the mere fact that my mother was like, well, I got to ask your father and I don't know. And I got to, like, she couldn't, like, he had gotten her to a point where she couldn't really think for herself. Because of her illness, she was, independent. I guess you could say weak. She was very, very dependent upon him. So, and I have a better understanding for it now, when I release a lot of those layers and stuff. So, I can't hold my mother at fault because I knew a lot of it was her illness and her sickness. And, what do, we think about lions. I heard this somewhere, I can't remember where, but let's think about lions. We say, okay, when you have all this courage, you're roaring like a lion. This is true. But also lions are predatory, right? They go to the pack and they seek out the what? The youngest,
that's right.
the weakest.
The weakest, exactly.
The weakest. They seek out the youngest, the weakest. That's who they focus on. They can scour the whole field, but they're laser focused on that weak one. That's the one they're going to get. They're going to get that. They ain't going to worry about the other ones, although the other ones might be closer to them. But that's going to be too much of a fight. That's going to be too much of a hassle. That target right there, nah, that's the one I need. I need that one in my life right now.
Yeah,
so I can play with it. I can dangle it. I can, devour it. I can put it to the side. And you know what? I think I'm gonna keep it over. I'm drag it over here. And that's literally, I'm talking about, that's domestic violence right there, right?
That is, and that is a perfect description of any predator in our society.
Any predator.
And the fact that they have almost a radar to detect vulnerability. And that is something that in my domestic support groups that I went through, it was a frequent topic, and that we used to almost have a little joke between us that they had a manual that they would all read because they would all do the same pattern of behavior, and it was the same thing. And so it was a moment of realization for so many of us that if that was the case, looking then at our pattern of behavior, we all recognize that when our pattern of behavior changed, when we realized how much this was impacting ourselves as who we were as people, and particularly when you have that disconnection, like you explained so eloquently, that disconnection to yourself when those acts are occurring, when it's something that repeats and repeats and repeats, you get to that point, you become numb and you do get very good at disconnecting. To allow that moment of reconnection to yourself,
right?
You get to the point where you say, I'm stopping this. I need to find out how. That change in our behavior has so much potential to therefore change their behavior as well to you. It's not going to change in most circumstances. They're going to move on to the next person.
Right, exactly.
And that's something we can't necessarily control. And I'm sorry that the system failed you in that you did report what happened and they didn't follow through with you or the situation, your perpetrator.
Right. And that's very common.
Yes.
So now here comes the victory kind of piece, or the defining moment, the redefining moment. where, once again, when I talked about just kind of just being and knowing, you just know inside your core, you know that something is more, but our circumstances has already shaped us, right? But it comes to the point where that inside just comes out, that inside, that screaming is just wants to come out and say, no, but this is really me. Like, this is me. Like, this is what you see is that this is really me and I need to come out.
Yes.
But you're not knowing how to do it. Like, a lot of people are just probably like, I don't know how. Well, because when you put that out there, the how will be literally hand delivered right to you. And it's a matter of whether you're ready for it. And so that's why I said you got to be careful what you ask for, because it's not going to come all nice and wrapped in a pretty bow. It's not. It's not with the present. It's not going to come to you so nice and fluffy and shiny. It's going to come to you like that iguana that's scaly and with claws and that can grow real big that you're afraid of. That's how it's going to come. And so it came for me in terms of, I found out that my father, who I disconnected from for over 30 years, was still molesting a child.
Oh.
And that child was a 7-year-old little girl that was my sister. Now I'm an only child, but now I got a sister. Oh, now I have a sister that my father is molesting. And so I was in disbelief, shock, right? But I knew in my heart of hearts, but I didn't know I didn't know what to do or how to do anything about it. But I just knew in my heart of hearts that he was still doing what he was doing to somebody, somebody's kid, somebody's little girl, whoever he was dating or whatever. So I just knew it, but I couldn't prove it. I didn't know where he was. And I just didn't want to go down that rabbit hole again, because I was already in a different one. I already fell in another one, and that was the face of domestic violence and, the whole everything with court and, custody and all the ugliness that comes with it.
Yes.
That was the other hole that I fell in. So I couldn't even climb out of that one, yet alone jump into another one. So it really surfaced, and it was like, okay, here it is. This is the meal that you were given. I know you don't like the mushy Brussels sprouts, but trust me, it's good for you. You just have to figure out how to cook them differently so it could be palatable, so you can get the nourishment that you need from this experience I need you to learn from. So I got this call. My cousin told me about what it was, an agency looking for the next of kin for, based on my sister, because she was in Child Protective Services.
Okay.
And I'm kind of like in disbelief. And so because everything is kind of like an infinity full circle. So because of me going through the domestic violence and being in the court system, I knew how to look stuff up. Right. So I just went straight to the record and I found his record and I just had a snap moment. And I just was so angry and pissed and mad because of the failure that happened years before. Because I'm like, if they would have did something or said something or whatever, then we wouldn't be readdressing this. I wouldn't be addressing this right now. Right. There wouldn't be a little girl being hurt. And then I don't even know who's in between. So
that's right.
I don't even know who's in between. So at that moment, I had to make a decision. And that decision was, because I knew what I wanted. I wanted to get some answers, right?
Yes.
It may not have been the way I thought. It wasn't that pretty packaged bow. And it re-earthed some things that I had to deal with. And it wasn't pretty. But I had to eat the mushy Brussels sprouts. I had to eat them. I had to make this face. I had to go. I had to pet the scaly iguana. I had to do it because it's something that if it was brought to me, it was brought to me for a reason. So it was something I had to go through. And I had to trust and believe the process that I had to go through it. So I just went and retold what happened to me. I went and said, I want to reopen an old case. So now I picked up that book that I closed 30 years prior. I repicked that book back up. Wow. And I said, I want to reopen the case that I want to open a previous case. So in order for them to know what I was talking about, I had to tell them. I had to give them information. And with that information, they were like, because he's there, he's in the system, he's in the process of being released. But no, that didn't happen because I came forward and
Yeah.
I used my voice once again. So
How powerful.
long story short, he's serving 20 years in prison because of me coming forward. So that was me now realizing my strength
Yeah.
because of my voice, because I had to face him and I haven't faced him in 30 years. And to the thing that I had to look at him in his face, like I'm looking at you and everyone out there, and just look at him like square to square, mano a mano, whatever that saying is. And like without, cowering down or shying or looking away, no, eyes locked. Even when he gave me compassionate eyes, like, to soften me and to kind of intimidate me. I was like, I'm not 7.
No.
I'm not 13. I'm not 17.
You're not that person anymore.
I'm not that person. And guess what? And I'm telling everything that you did. And I'm
Yeah.
telling everything. And that's what I did. And, so he fought it. He fought it. But to this day, he's still in prison. And so for me, where did that left me with now I had to go through this process.
Yeah.
And just, unleash a lot of the stuff that was buried, get all that dirt off of me because I buried it so deep. And to now, it was such a freeing moment, even in that pain. And I think that's the thing I need people to understand. We bury stuff so long because we don't want to face it. We don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. It's painful. It hurts.
It's painful and it hurts. But guess what? In order for it to get better, you have to allow that pain it has to run its course.
Yeah.
It has to run it. You have to build up this strength within, this mental strength. It's like, I'm not feeling it, and get your support that's around you to help you to get through it. And you will get through it. And when you get to that other side, it's like, oh, this is an amazing feeling. And it's different layers. It's different, because it still comes up. It even came up not that long ago. And, just was something that occurred that I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know that was still there. I thought I got rid of stuff because it's residue, you just know. But what you're doing is you're building yourself up your own immunity. Like you're building up your own immunity, because when it happens, because it's so complex, it's so complex. Like I tell people all the time, I say, it's not just PTSD, it's complex PTSD. And it can come out of nowhere. Like, and that's just how I'm wired. Like I can't change that. That's already physiologically, whatever the word is, it's already embedded. It's science. It's broken down. It's different from someone who's PTSD from a war fighter going into war, certain noises and sounds. It's a temporary thing. If they've already went to war, they're having a normal base of knowing how to rationalize. The front of our brain is our frontal cortex. That's basically for rationalization and reasoning, for thinking. The back of your brain is an amygdala. That's where it's fight or flight. So that's where we learn to either fight when we're like danger is happening, or we flight, we retreat. See, I was a flighter. I shut down. So I was a flighter. I wasn't a fighter. So if I was a fighter, then stuff probably wouldn't have happened, or it would have still happened, but I would have been one of those real defiant kids, the kids that's like, they just are bad. They are bad, such and such. Like I would have been one of those kids. We all know those kids, but there's a reason why they're that bad. They're acting out for something. Their trigger is to fight. Oh, then you have the other kid. They're so quiet. They're so shy. Oh, they're not a problem. They just sit there and draw. You never even know they're there. No kid is supposed to be that quiet. That's because they're retreating. They're
internalizing.
They're internalizing. Because yes, kids have their quiet moments, but not that quiet, right? Not that quiet.
And in the absence of that happiness too, that inability to be enjoying the moments when everyone else is.
Exactly. So like I said, I just got to the point where I'm like, what, as I start learning, I say, I got to share this with other people, because like you said, so many other women and men I'm learning, and young girls, and just are going through this even to this day. And especially in the midst of this pandemic, where people are just confined, and, so domestic violence is back on the rise, sexual abuse. And I even said, listen, don't think that, because you're all safe in the house, that nothing's going to happen. No, it will still happen. It will happen right in your face, right under your nose. It's going to still happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we just have to keep those things in mind, and then just know how to protect, ourselves, protect our loved ones, And that's like a little, I guess, a PSA on a side note. But I was talking about, just for yourself and just kind of like addressing these issues that you had and getting to a place of happiness, finding a place of joy, finding a place where you can reconnect yourself. Because when you learn to disconnect, you learn to disconnect.
That's right.
And you can go there, because I know I can go there just like that. I will disconnect in a second. I will get numb in a second. It's because it's already ingrained in me. So that's why it's complex. It's a habit. It's a habit that usually habits can be broken, but this one cannot, because this is already, it's I can't get the words out for it, but it's complex PTSD. It's so complex. Like there's nothing you can do to fix it or repair it. PTSD, someone can have PTSD. You can give them a little dog. You can give them a dog. You can give them maybe a pill. It may happen for a second and they're like, okay. And it's just one thing, it might trigger and they're okay. But somebody like us who it's something that's happened, and especially in the formative years, because our brains are developing. So that's how my brain developed. So that's why I'm saying it's already ingrained. People say, oh no, you can change it. You can do what you want. I can. But at the same token, when something comes up, what I can do is now train myself in how to respond to when I get triggered off of a situation.
Yes.
That's the only thing that I'm responsible for at this time, because the triggers are going to happen. Like I said, not just within the past couple of months, I had a trigger, something totally unrelated, but it brought me back to a situation. And I'm like, oh gosh, is that, so once again, one of those things where, okay, so that all I'm good for type of thing. Right. And then it made me go down that hole, and I'm like, stop. Okay, let me hold on. Let me start pulling. So now I gave myself the tools to now be able to recognize when something shifts me and knocks me off. And so now I learned to, okay, let me just sit in it. So I can sit in it for a second, allow it to do what it has to do, allow it to hurt for a second, process it, and now use some of the tools and the skills that I have built to build me strong, to now understand. See, that's the understanding. We talking about forgiveness and all that. We got to forgive ourselves. We have to understand ourselves and just know that this is me. Like, this is how I'm wired. And unfortunately, there's nothing I can really do about it. Like, you can get chemo for cancer. You can take pills for different ailments. You can go get surgery and have something repaired and fixed. They can never, ever, ever take away what was done to me. It's going to always be there. The response is going to always be there. The physical response is going to always be there.
So you bring up an important point there about flashbacks and that survival instinct that our body has. And to use the analogy of lizards again, we have a primal, very old system in our brain. And that is the system that's going to put us into that fight or flight. That is, if anyone's felt shock for anything before, that is that system that we're in. Some people freeze, some people fight, some people run away. And so knowing that when you've been through experiences like this and repeated trauma, because repeated trauma is different to one-off traumas, and that's why it's complex. That's why it's complex, because it's on top. It's on top. It's on top. Exactly.
On top.
And it changes who you are as a person and your connection to yourself. And so not to discredit anybody's adversity or trauma, because all trauma is difficult. All adversity is difficult for us.
Right.
There are those extra layers when you have repeated trauma, and to understand that those flashbacks are going to happen. Your body is going to kick into action. Your adrenaline is going to start running. And as you said, having that management, that little bag of tricks that you can in that moment recognize that information, recognize this is what's happening, and work out how to calm that system down. And it is possible, as you said, to calm that system down. We may not feel that it's possible to stop that reaction happening, but if you can work out ways to get through it and move through it faster each time, it's a consistency thing. And look, if it's going to happen anyway, you may as well work out how to minimize the effects of it so that it's not ruling your life and that you'll have your moment. And I still myself have those moments regularly enough that you'll have that moment and you'll be able to work through it and, in fact, create that deeper connection to yourself as a result.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That you, like you said, that was so perfect the way you described it, because, and the reason why I started laughing is because like you said, it just happens and you can't control it. And that was a situation when I had traveled and I'll try to abbreviate this. I traveled and it was kind of like we were on high alert because they were talking about, we went to Punta Cana, and I think at the time it was, trying to say, watch yourself as an American type of thing. So now this stuff is embedded, right?
Right.
So now we get to the hotel, and the hotel tells us, make sure you shut your door because we've been having problems with people going in people's rooms. It was embedded, right?
Right. So you're looking for it.
Right. I was looking for it. So now here we go. We go drop our stuff off. We go, go get something to eat, whatever. We shut our door, and I had to go back to the room, and then I shut the door, and then we left, and I had to go back to the room. And the way the rooms were situated, we had to go like each room had its own little hallway, and then you had two doors. So it wasn't like the main corridor and your doors were on the corridor. The main corridor, and then it was like a little walk through. And so there was all cutouts. There were cutouts. So I inadvertently went in the wrong cutout. Okay. And the door was open. And I'm like, why is the door open? And I opened the door and I didn't see anything in the room. Now, immediately. Now, here's the thing. I scanned the room. I recognized that stuff looked different because I remember saying, the bed is different. The bed looked different. I'm like, they ate the snacks in the bar. Like I scanned the room and recognized that things was off from what I recognized my room to be. But then I also back here, oh my gosh, all our stuff is gone. They stole our luggage. We have nothing. Immediately went into panic mode. Yeah. It took over. When I tell you it took over, and it was no stopping, and it just went, and it was, and I couldn't stop it. It was like that locomotive once it gets started. And I clearly remember looking and questioning that something. I remember questioning it, but it just triggered like, okay. Now I turned into like flight mode. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, like I got panicky and I started flipping out, and I'm like, we don't have our stuff, because that other stuff was embedded. And then I was looking for it or anticipating it. So I was already angst, and it just kicked right in. The rational part of my brain totally it malfunctioned that day. And when we finally got back, we ran, got my son, got security, came back. And then I realized it was the wrong one. Talk about embarrassed. I mean, I can laugh at it now, but that's the prime example. That's when I realized, like, oh, there's something I can't control. When it happens, it happens. Like, I'm just wired that way because I never got a chance to develop that rational side, because I was always in protection mode. Since I was little, always in protection mode. So
it's definitely a much more complex issue when you're talking about childhood trauma.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's why I study it, because I need to understand me. Right. And that's why I study it. So I understand, like, I may not have all the terms, correct, but I understand the principle behind it and the definitions behind it. And I relate to it because I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's why I'm like that. Oh yeah, that's why that happens. And then you can understand. So not only do you get a chance to understand yourself, you get to understand other people, and you get to understand trauma as a whole. And like I said, I always tell people, I said, listen, my trauma may not look like your trauma, but the result is always still the same. The outcome is the same. We both ask those questions, like you said, I think, why me, or why not, or how come, and why, and what happened, and what can I do? Like, we always ask those questions about, our circumstances. And it's usually not even, where it's beyond our control. It's definitely beyond our control. So yeah, it's very complex. So
it is very complex.
It is very complex.
So let me ask you another question.
Sure.
So we've heard so many parts of your story and how complex it is. And we've I'm sure so many of the viewers will have identified themselves in some of those moments.
Mm-hmm.
And even, as you said, it wasn't those circumstances, but the feelings, the emotions, the reactions, the responses.
Exactly.
So in asking the question, why me, what have you found in learning to reconnect to who you are, learning to integrate those experiences to be the woman that you are today? I see a woman who is out there constantly, who is not only sharing your message, you are inspiring people, you are helping to empower people, you are on this journey with people and explaining to them just by being there and sharing that you are not alone.
Right.
So what is your why me now? What is your response to that? How do you now define that these things happen and this is what you've made of it?
Why me now? Because other people need to be set free.
Yeah.
In order for our family structures to be different and better, in order for our communities to be better, we have to be better. And we have to be better by first acknowledging and recognizing, like, there's no need to continue to suffer. There's no need to continue to be in pain. There's no need to continue to, like I say, fall into other rabbit holes. It has to come to a time to end it. So why me now is because this is the assignment. This is the time, such a time as this. So, I would say, why not me? Like I'm aware. And I had this conference. I explained this the other day, and I think someone got offended by it, or maybe didn't clearly understand where I was coming from.
Okay.
Because I said, I kind of wear this, what happened to me, as a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
And their response was, well, I would never condone a sexual abuse. So are you glad that it happened to you? Because they were a little confused. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad you asked that question. No, I don't condone it at all. That's why I'm an advocate for it, right? I'm an advocate for it, but more so for the terms of the people who it's already happened to.
Yes.
Right? It's for the people who's already happened to, so now they can live a productive life. So in order for me to be, and I think I said this when I was being interviewed the other day, and I said, just like you go to a heart doctor, right? You go to a heart specialist, and you want them to study every single valve, every single part of a heart to know exactly what's going on with your heart. So they can repair it, they can fix it, they can treat it. You want them to have years of study, years of experience, years of expertise. So in order for me to be able to be assistance and to help other people find their truth, to understand their value, their worth, to stand in and have their courage, have their voice, and to heal from their past trauma and abuse, whatever it may be, I need to become a trauma specialist. So therefore, I had to have went through all of this stuff in order for me to understand and to relate to other individuals. So I'm not the other person on the other end is looking at a textbook. I'm giving it to you real life,
Yeah, you've got the lived in experience.
The lived in experience. And that's what my film is about, because it's to give people a narrative. Like the book will tell you one thing, because yes, I was all the textbook statistics, but I'm going to give you the realistics of the impact, the true real impact of what occurs and what happens, and how there's so many broken people where that 5-year-old, it went away. Like they were going to allow, and she was 7 at the time, it was going to just go away. And then she was going to be put back in a house with him, and he would have continuously abused her. And now the mother knew what was happening. This is what gave me a lens into my own mother, looking at my sister's mother, because she knew it was happening, but he had convinced her, oh, it was an accident, or I won't do it again, and things of that nature. He was very convincing, right? Very convincing to lure and get what he needed and what he wanted. So I'm very clear on my assignment, and that's why I do what I do, to allow other people, because if I can talk about my story still with a smile on my face, right? Yeah. I don't talk about my story and I don't get upset, and I don't talk about my story about, well, this happened to me. I talk about my story to empower you, to let you know, like, you know what? Yeah, that happened to me, but it's not me. And guess what? And you can be this way too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the example, because if you don't have an example, if you only have an example of brokenness, then you're just going to say, okay. But if I'm going to show you light, if I can show you there's hope and there's a possibility, and if I can get through this and I can work through this, even letting you know that, yeah, there's days where sometimes this stuff just comes back up, and just being able to identify what it is.
Mm.
And then you too can have a better life. Like I said, my first 50 years, I'm 50 now. My first 50 years, it was beyond my control. This next 50, I'm gonna be like Janet Jackson. This control.
Yes, good on you. Good on
Yeah,
you.
this is all. I'm in the driver's seat, and I have control over the destiny of my life. So those other things are things that happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
They're not me. They don't define me. I get to now create a new narrative. I had a blueprint that I was following that was already mapped out for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get to create my own blueprint.
Yes.
And I get to create my own journey. I get to create my own dead ends, and I get to create my own, different ways of being and living and existing.
Yes.
Even in the midst of knowing what I left behind.
Yes,
and it's okay.
absolutely.
And I'm okay with it. It's because, like I said, I had someone tell me, she's like, you don't talk like you've been abused. And she said, I talk with women all over the country, and they tell their story. And she said, but when you talk about your story, you talk about it so differently. I've never heard anyone talk about being abused the way you do. And that's what someone literally just told me, like maybe within the past few weeks. And I was like, wow.
That's a testament to where you've come to.
Yeah.
With all of that hard work in the healing. I wanted to ask you one more thing about a word that you've used a number of times, and it's with what you were just talking about there, it's become evident to me that you don't believe you're broken anymore.
Right. No.
And that is something that I come across regularly with clients, that they're repeating out loud to themselves, to other people, but I am broken. This happened in my formative years. I am broken. I can't be fixed. And my response to that is always that as a human being, we're not like a cup that is broken. But let's use the cup analogy. In Japan, when a cup is broken, they fix it by putting it back together with gold. They see the value. And they see it. It's almost like you were saying, that blueprint, you're creating a new blueprint and you're putting all this good stuff in.
Right.
And I would love to know how you explain that to people. If you had someone come to you to say, I am broken, I can't be fixed, how would you respond to that?
I respond by saying there's beauty in your brokenness. I respond to the light can only shine through brokenness.
Yeah.
Because when you have those cracks, so we're not going to fill it with gold. We're just going to make a vase, and we're going to drop the vase. In the vase, we're going to put it back together. All the pieces may not fit, but you're going to put it back together. You're going to glue it, and then you can put a candle in it, and you're going to light, and the light shines through it differently. And it does, like you said, with the analogy with the cup, it has its own new intrinsic value, and it has its own beauty, because now you've created something new. You created another piece of art that is very unique to its own being, right? And so that gives you beauty. That gives you something of value. That gives you something that no one can take away. So it depends, how you see it. Do you see it as broken, or do you see it as whole? Do you see it as whole? So as long as you continue to tell yourself that you're broken, then you will act broken. You will respond broken. You will attract other brokenness.
Yes.
So, but the one thing that you have to understand that, yes, you were broken. You were past tense. But you understand that things that were broken, it's more delicate. You have to handle with a different set of care. Yeah. It's fragile. It's more fragile because guess what? It can break a lot easier. So then you don't allow yourself you don't put the broken vase on a thin shelf where you know it can fall again.
Yeah.
You put it somewhere where it can be a little bit more secure, right? Because you know it's fragile. but you put it back together because it has value. It's worth something. If not, it would have just got thrown in the trash.
Mm.
Right? It was worth putting back together. It was worth trying to find all the little pieces and putting it back together, even if it was a little crooked, even if it has a little hole right there. You know what I mean? Even if it's missing this piece right here, it still was important. And that's what I need people to understand, that you're still important.
Yes.
You're still valuable. You still have a place on the shelf. It's just you have to go to a different shelf because now you're a little bit more vulnerable. You're a little bit more fragile for other people to handle. And you know that. So now you place yourself in areas. Don't allow someone to handle you and they're not going to handle you with care. You don't allow that. You don't put yourself in that situation. You don't put yourself in that circumstances, and you don't think that of yourself. But a lot of it has to do just believing in yourself, finding that light within yourself. Because I can say, yeah, I was broken. I was. I mean, that's the reality. Like I can give an example. And I think this was around a time when I went back to talk to the abuser that abused me, that helped me, and all that good stuff. Everything is full circle. So I remember I went to him because I was in dating sites and stuff. I was dating, and I was like, so I started seeing like, something's not right. So I had to ask him a question, and I don't know why I brought that back up. But anyway, my whole premise for coming off of the sites is because then I soon realized, I now remember, because it was the whole thing about dealing with my dad thing. So I already talked about that. But it was more so about because now I recognize, wow, I'm broken. I said, there's nothing but a bunch of broken people on this site. And then I said, so I'm removing myself from this site because there's nothing on here but a bunch of broken people. I said, including me. So acknowledging it is key.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that, yeah, I'm broken. See, but now you got to do the work and fix it. You have to get all the pieces you need, pull up all those pieces together, find some time and put yourself back together. Yeah. Put yourself back together. So knowing it is one thing, but now it's what do you do with that once you know it? Yeah. Do you just say, oh, okay, that's what it is? Well, that explains because I'm just broken. That's an excuse. That's an excuse because you don't want to deal with it, because you don't want that pain. But unfortunately, if you really, truly want to heal, you really, really, truly, if it means that much to you, you will endure the pain in order for you to get better. For those who have given birth, it's a pain that you don't ever want to remember until you have to do it again.
Yep.
But you endure that pain because of the gift you're about to receive. And that is this bundling baby that you can love unconditionally and it can love you back. So you will endure that pain. 9 months of being uncomfortable. 9 months of throwing up, of getting, gaining weight, being emotional, all that good stuff. And then, gosh, all the medicine you have to take, and maybe you're high rate. Like people who've been pregnant, they know. Or if you have to prepare for a major surgery, you know what you have to do to prepare, right? So, but you do it because you know what you're going to get. You want it that bad. You want, you have to get this surgery done. Let's just say you need a knee replacement. You want that knee replaced so bad because you want to dance again. So you will purposely go to the doctor, let the doctor tell you, okay, I'm going to break your knee open. I'm going to put some metal in it. And you're going to be kind of on your back for a while, for maybe months. You have to depend on other people. You can't do anything. And it's going to really, really hurt. And we have to prescribe all this stuff for you because it's going to be very unbearable. You probably have to learn how to walk again. Like, so, okay. And you go, okay, sign me up. When do I go? Why can I get my replacement? Like, I can't wait. So then why we don't have the same attitude when it comes to your soul, your spirit, your wellness, your happiness? Why won't you fight? Why won't you fight for you?
And that's all about the value we place on ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if we're placing that value on an end result from an operation, for example, are we placing that value on ourselves? And again, that goes back to the manipulation of what abuse is in the first place. It is that those mind games. It is that low self-worth that is feeding into that. It is that confusion, and it is that disconnection from ourselves. And and so that is the core of being able to understand how you can move through this, and with the right support. I'm sure you agree. The support is key, and your grandma, right from the very start, was the start of that support. And it's very important to know who you can trust in learning how to trust yourself as well.
Exactly. And just don't discredit, any other circumstances that you may have been through, because, like I said, the sexual child abuse was the foundation that allowed the domestic violence to come into my life. Okay. The domestic violence, going through and processing and healing and fighting in the midst of domestic violence to really have my voice, is what will set the foundation for giving me my voice to heal and fight to repair from the sexual abuse.
Yeah.
So it's, once again, it's that infinity thing again. One thing, it's the one thing caused it, and then the other thing helped repair it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I relate to that myself personally as well. And that is how the WhyMe movement started. That is where the WhyMe podcast series has come from, the WhyMe challenge, which you were in that.
Right.
And
which is awesome.
Thank you. This is what drives it. This is what drives me. In the experience that I had, I was, by everyone else's terms, a successful person when this stuff happened to me. What people didn't realize is that I was publicly defamed in my first big career that I had gone into. I ran away from that. I didn't know how to deal with that. I ran away. I was clinically depressed, diagnosed clinically depressed. And that was when I met my husband. And I look back and I say, no wonder I was so vulnerable at that time. I was so pushing everything in my life that had happened. Now, at that point in time, that felt immense to me. Little did I know the experiences I would then have to learn how to cope with and move through and heal from were far more immense. So it's always about where you're at in that point in time. It's not about comparing. People compare themselves to other people's circumstances and situations and trauma. You don't even compare to your own,
compare to your own. I used to compare mine. I used to devalue my own trauma. Because I used to devalue my own trauma to the point where I used to say, well, it wasn't that bad, so what am I complaining about? Like, it's not, everything wasn't that bad, because although I had, I was molested, okay, but he didn't sleep with me. He almost did, but he didn't sleep with me, and I didn't have baby by him, so it's not that bad. It's so bad, right? So my domestic violence, well, I didn't have black and blue marks, so I don't look like the poster child for domestic violence, so it's not that bad.
That's
where someone else is, you know what I mean? Like, where people were dragged and almost lost their life. Like, I mean, I still almost lost my life too. But it just was different. It was just different. So I had to learn to value my own experience and not to compare it to anyone else's. But I devalued my experience. Like, I couldn't even talk about it. And, granted, even when I first started talking about my story, it wasn't that gut wrenching, like, oh no, like this happened, which is it's kind of morbid that people really want to see the poster child of, like, domestic violence with the black eye, with the tubes and the broken this and the broken that and the, like, but it comes in another way too. And it comes in my way. It just didn't look like that. It was physical. It was, it was mental, which was worse. It was financial, which was worse, which I'm still digging out of, right? Financial, it was spiritual. It was, it was all those economical. Those are just as bad because it all has to do with control. So, was I injured? Yes, I still was injured and I still was hurt. And even to the point where, was I even had, was punched in the face, but I didn't get a black eye. So because I didn't get a black eye, it negated that I got punched in the face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so
that I got repeatedly punched in the face, but because I didn't
Yeah.
have any bruises from it, that, oh, well, no, okay. What? I know what a fist looks like coming at my eye, you know?
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. And that is
You
one of the
know?
things that I discovered through my own experience, in that in my head, despite everything, and I'd gone through every type of abuse you can think of, including severe sexual assault within that marriage, because up until a point in time he hadn't physically hit me and belted me up in terms of the way that people in Australia speak. He didn't belt me up. I didn't recognise it as domestic violence.
Right.
You know,
right.
And this is one of the things that I worked so hard ever since in helping let people be aware that domestic violence has all these facets. It's very complex.
Yes.
And that most of us know somebody, even if we're not aware of them, who's going through something. And
Right.
to understand, for me, the journey I took in coming out of that, my moment coming out of that marriage, because I'd tried a few times and had not succeeded in leaving for a number of reasons, my point where I flicked my switch inside and said, that is it. I am not returning. It doesn't matter what happens in my life. This is completely finished. And I was able to make plans to get my baby out safely and then myself.
Okay.
It was because he nearly hit my baby in front of me. I don't know what he'd done behind the scenes. I never had any bruises on him, but I had stories that came out years later from other people about different things that they'd witnessed that didn't seem right, didn't feel right. And the day that he came at me holding my baby, ripped his shirt off and was that close, like we're talking that far, with his swipe from knocking both my son and I onto the floor, was the moment that something in my brain went, oh, right, now I understand. This is wrong. I need to leave.
Right.
My baby's life was in danger.
Right.
So even for me at that point, I was still so disconnected from all that sexual assault. I was so disconnected from me. I wasn't thinking about my safety. It was about my child at that point in time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mama bear kicks in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Mama bear kicks in.
Yeah. And as Mama Bear, it's so easy to be giving everything to your children and ignoring your own need to be connected to yourself and fill your own cup up so that you can give the best to them. And so that was a journey that I went on in my healing process, in understanding what domestic violence was in all its forms, in understanding why I disconnected from myself and why I felt numb towards myself, in understanding why I learned to downplay what was happening to me and why I didn't feel that I could speak about it for so long. And as you're aware, a lot of my journey was communicating what happened through my artwork before I could verbally communicate.
Right.
And that was an amazing journey for me to get to the point where I could speak about it. And I don't know if I've ever told you this. However, when I put my biggest piece out, it was denied being shown in the exhibition that it was part of. For so many of these places, which were public spaces that were having this group exhibition to raise awareness of domestic violence, to raise awareness of sexual assault, that they wouldn't put my work out there because it was too confronting, because it used words like sodomy on it. And it was a felt piece that had 7 different sections going through my journey to the point where I left. And they refused to show it. And there were only 2 places that I remember that it was actually shown. And as a result of that, I then found my verbal voice. For I realised that at that point, my art was not going to be shown. It was being rejected because of the power of that message.
The power of the message, right?
Yeah.
And that's so ironic, because here it is. They want to show that image, right? But yet at the same token, diminish it at the same time.
That's
that's
right.
too in your face.
Too
Like
confronting.
we can't, it's too confronting. Like that's too, we got to keep it soft and fluffy. Like domestic violence is not soft and fluffy.
No.
You know, because when it comes time for like funders and things, we have to make it so that way they feel like they're, you know, because I served on boards, right? So I understand that back talk. I understand back talk. And even to the point where, you know, being on boards, and I was like verbal, and I was starting to come out and say, listen, use me. Like use me. And that was too, no, we can't really.
It's too raw.
It's too raw. It's too raw. Like, and I'm saying there's power in using me.
Yes. And
it's like, no, we can help other people, but it's okay when it's others. But when it's in-house, it's like, we got to brush it under the rug. So I'm like, why are you brushing me under the rug?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not afraid to talk about my story. And I mean, I am, but I'm willing to sacrifice my story if it's going to help somebody else.
Very good distinction there. And this is the thing, that if we let it, culture and society can keep sending us that message that we're not worth it, that we do need to bury this. And it's so important. And that's where the connection to your core self, your true authentic self, is so important, because once you get to that point, you know it, once you know who you are, and once you gain clarity in sharing your message and the power that you have
behind it,
the power behind it, then those voices, it's like that Jim Rohn, stand guard at the door of your mind. Those voices do not penetrate in. They do not land anymore. And to be at that place is an amazing space to be in.
It really is. It really, really is. It really is. So, But very, very similar, very similar. Like I said, the trauma may not be the same, but the experiences.
Yes. And the healing journey.
And the healing journey.
Yes. And again, the healing journey is different for everyone. However, it has those common elements. It has all of those aspects that we can relate to. And one of the most important things, and the reason why I call my tribe the WhyMe tribe, when I went into my domestic violence and sexual assault recovery groups, we spoke about being a tribe of women. And this happens to men. I'm not excluding men here. However, women who've been sexually assaulted, when they're starting that healing journey, need to be around other women who've been sexually assaulted. The same would apply for men. I speak from a woman's perspective because I'm a woman.
Right, exactly.
So understanding the whole concept that you end up being so isolated in that situation, like you said, within that house, you are isolated within that situation, to realize that there is a tribe of people out there who can understand you are not alone. You have this support. You have this combined collective knowing to surround yourself in. That is so healing and so important.
Very
important. So needed.
Right.
And available.
Absolutely.
Available if we know where to find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Wow. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. That's all I can say. It's amazing.
Thank you so much for being here today to share your story, Carolyn.
You're quite welcome. You're absolutely welcome.
Yeah, I know that so many of our listeners are going to not only relate, they're going to understand, and I hope and I believe and I know that some of our listeners, and I've got tears and my voice is going to go, because as you know, this means so much to us as survivors.
It does. It really does.
I know that someone and many someones are going to hear these messages, and this is going to touch their heart and allow them to take that step to share their story, to reconnect with themselves and who they are, and to learn again how to love themselves and have that beautiful connection.
And definitely have that beautiful connection, because I mean, I can tell you that this each year, you know, I'm 50. So, you know, I have years of trauma.
Yeah.
So I have years of healing. And each year, you know, that I heal, you know, I rediscover a new me, you know, and I can become a new me. And it's just the newness. It's like I get to open up the shiny present, you know, that's wrapped in a bow. I get to create the new, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so now I don't have to wait for it to be delivered to me because I am it. I am
You
that
are.
present. I am that shiny bow. So that's how I have to learn how to now look at life. And now when you do that, you're able to walk differently. You're able to talk differently. You're able to maneuver through spaces differently because now you truly understand you. Now, will you be up against and face some different things that it's like, whoa, okay, wait a minute. I'm not used to that yet. Keyword yet. So it's like just kind of learning how to be this Jedi, like, oh, the force be with you, you know, the lifesaver thing. And, you know, like I would never have, you know, wore a flower or an I had to pull it up because you guys would have thought I didn't have no clothes on. You know, off the shoulder, you know, kind of, you know, just being really into my own femininity, my own sexuality, on my terms, not necessarily being promiscuous, but just really truly understanding my worth, my value, my body, my me, you know, and I can show up, you know, because I thought that I had to always be this, I had to prove myself. So I had to be hard and I had to, you know, you're working in the business world and, you know, like I was and just, well, I'm still am, and just having to wear suits and just kind of, you know, like just leave being a girl aside because I'm not valued as a girl because I was already taught that I wasn't valued as a woman or a girl. So, okay, I guess I have to be one of the boys because I want to be where you got. I want to be, and I remember saying it growing up, I want to be where people least expect me. And so that was always my determination. Like that's what I was striving for. I was like, okay, I'm going to be in places where you wouldn't expect to see me. And I was, and I still am in places that you would least expect me. But before I didn't understand the power of me being in those spaces.
Right.
Oh, now I'm very clear. I'm very, very clear.
I'm so glad you are.
Yeah, I'm very clear.
Yeah. It's been wonderful.
Just let everyone know that you'll get there. You have examples like you and me, and there's so many other amazing, wonderful survivors and thrivers, overcomers, you know. So I'm just Carolyn at this point, and it is a good life. And that's, like I said, my film. And I hope that somehow we can figure out how everybody can maybe see it or whatever. I'm trying to get into a festival out there. So, you know, that way they can know that it's still a good life. You still have a good life.
Yes. And how can people get in contact with you, Carolyn?
They can get in contact. The best way is all social media platforms at Magnify Your Essence. So Magnify Your Essence. They can also, if they want to contact me per se, I think it's on my name. This is bit.ly. What is that? Yeah, bit.ly /MYE-contact. And that'll just, you know, it's like a database. So that way I can get your information and figure out what your you know, pain points are or whatever, if that's the case, or you just want to go on a mailing list. And that's the best way to reach me at this point. If they want to reach me. Yeah.
I'll put those links in the description. And for those who would like to buy a copy of your book, where can they do so?
Sure. They can purchase it off of, and it's the best way, the easiest way is Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com. Or they can just, in that message thing, they can let me know. Well, no, you're all the way out there. I don't know what the shipping will be out there. Just do it through Amazon. Because I just shipped a book out to someone and it's going to cost more sending it to, so just go to Amazon.
Yeah. The shipping's pretty reasonable from wherever you are in the world.
So just ship it through Amazon. Get it through Amazon or Barnes and Noble. So that's where they can get it. And it's magnified thought. So here's this is what it looks like. So
lovely.
Magnified thought. So, and this was birthed out of my healing. So this is really a good tool to use when you're in that space where you're like, you know, enough is enough and I'm ready. Yes. So when you're ready, that's what this is for, because it helps you shift it helps you shift your thoughts from going from a survivor to a thriver to a overcomer to, you know, there's different words have power.
Yes.
Words have power. It takes you from saying I am broken to I was broken. Like I am has power.
Yes.
I am is constant. I am is what's attached to you right now. Was is your past. Like, okay, that was my past. And then that's it. You don't give power to it because it's already gone. But
So true.
I am. It just even when you say it, your mouth, your body just does something different. It says, I am. See, it just your whole body shifts when you say I am because it gives power. But
It does.
I was. You see, I just went down low. It just automatically.
That word but, very good at doing that. As soon as you say but, in most contexts, it diminishes what you're about to say.
It diminishes everything that you just said before it. Yeah. I'm a good person, but I've been broken.
Yeah.
So exactly. Guess what? So you really just need to say, I've been broken.
Mm.
So universe, I've been, okay. Yeah, that's past tense. So I'm good. I try to, this is something, a little thing I do when something comes out that should not come out. And I know how the universe pretty much hears everything and can't decipher what I really mean. Erase it. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, stop.
Erase
Backtrack.
it. Backtrack.
Yes.
Let's rewind.
Yes.
Let me rephrase that for you because I don't know where it's going to come from.
I love that. I still use but sometimes and just. And when I catch myself doing it, hang on a minute, what I meant to say was, and
what I meant to say was,
I am, and
exactly.
you know,
exactly.
so yeah.
You'll like this phrase. I do this when something escapes me, because I never say I forget anything, because then it never comes back. So when something escapes me, a thought, I'll just say it boomerangs back.
Yes, it does. It does. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. So just let everybody know your innocence and your worth, it boomerangs back.
It does. It does.
It does. It does. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome.
You're welcome. So technically that was the end of the podcast. However, Carolyn and I continued. I'm laughing because I've just in editing this episode been listening again. Carolyn and I continued for a long time, which I've decided to keep in at the end of this episode, discussing many aspects of the things that we discussed during the episode, but also so much more. Fair warning, there are some graphic conversations coming up. There are also some amazing epiphanies that we both had at the same time, and quite a lot of other really interesting full circle moments that we both discussed. And so I have decided to keep this in, as I know so many of you will get a lot of interest and understanding again out of this discussion. And this is one of the things I love about stepping into who I am, in that once you learn to be authentic and transparent, and really very few discussions are off the table, when you are that open with people and they reciprocate back with you, it allows both of you, or all of you, if you include more people in that roundtable discussion, if you like. It is that connection that we make that allows ourselves, our heart, our brain to process some of the things that we go through, and particularly survivors who have gone through similar situations. So prepare for laughter, prepare for some pretty deep stuff, and ultimately prepare for an intimate conversation between two people that have just had a profound connection at a really deep primal level, discussing how we have found our way after trauma.
I guess I don't cry too much about my story any longer. Like I've gotten to the point where there's no need for me to cry. Now there's still sadness for it. Yeah, there are some moments, something might touch me, but I think when I really get emotional about it is when I really want people to get it. Like I really need, like, that's what I get. Like what happened with you. Like when I want people to be like you can be happy, like you can have joy, like you can have, like you're not your circumstances. Like you listed all the stuff that happened to me, right? It doesn't equate to all the stuff that I've been able to accomplish.
Yes.
Like it doesn't make sense, but yet there's still some disconnects, right? Okay, because I'm human.
Correct.
And it's like, okay, so now let's work to put these things in alignment. And that's, like I said, why I had that little trigger not that long ago, because now what's been happening, why I realized the stuff about my mom, because I've been on this journey to say, okay, I need to things, once again, he still asks that question, okay, something's not right. Okay, I need something's a little off. Like I've always, like, still something's not right. My mind is good, my spirit is good, but my body is off. I got to fix this because so I can be in more alignment. So when you think about with water, water is supposed to flow. We're made up of water. Water is supposed to flow. And it's funny because the person that I talked about that helped me, that abused me, that helped me again, he told me this, and he was like, he said, he was like, you can use it. I know you're going to take credit for it. I said, no, I'll say that you said, because like I said, that's our relationship right now. We joke about a lot of stuff. So he was like, no, he said, because you're water. He said, so all of those things that happened to you were like dams. He said, but now you removed them. So now the water can flow. So that's what happens when we're now in alignment. The things can now flow. And I was asking for, because my prayers have always been for discernment, but heightened discernment. And then also in this time period, that anything that subconsciously to just kind of let the stuff out and let it go.
Yes.
So those things, because that's what I asked for, right?
Yes.
And so when the stuff was coming out, and I'm like, oh crap, I didn't know I had to deal with that. Yes. I thought I dealt with that already. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is really messing me up right now. And so it's like, okay, I guess I asked for this, so I guess I got to sit with this now. I have to sit with this. I have to process this. See, but now I know how to, right?
Yes, that's
Where
right.
before that trigger would have triggered me into something else, and I'd have been neurotic, and I'd have been anxious, and I'd have been like tripping and probably being mean to people and yelling at people, or I might have retreated. Like, I don't know. I was losing, that's what happens. But because I can recognize, like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like I literally the other day woke up. You won't believe it. I've never done this before. Woke up in tears.
Did you?
I woke up in tears, crying, like bawling, like bent over in a fetal position, just like wailing with my head, because I fell asleep on my couch. So with my face buried into my couch. And my dream that I had, it was so vivid. And it was like I just eased. Usually like you have a dream and you just wake up abruptly. Like that was weird. Like, was I just dreaming? No, this dream just flowed right from my subconscious to my conscious, and it became my reality. Right. Where I woke up crying. I mean, that was like tears. Yeah. Like tears gut my stomach, and I just woke up, and I'm like, and now I know I'm awake, but I'm still crying because I was still feeling, I was still experiencing that feeling from the dream. And it was like, and I was like, okay, I gotta look this up. Like, what is dreaming? What is crying? Like I had to figure that out. I'm like, wait a minute. Had to sit with it. Had to process.
Did you remember what the dream was?
Oh no, clearly. The dream, what it was. Now watch the power in this. And that's what I say. I think a lot of times, that's why I said people got to sit with it and not ignore it because it's painful. But I had to sit with this. I'm like, wait a minute. This was a message for me for something. Yes. It was to release something, because it was a release. That cry was a release. Yes. That feeling. And I was like, this feeling, because it was an embrace. I had an embrace. And the embrace was from Steve Harvey. Why was Steve Harvey? I don't know. But it was Steve Harvey, to the point where I was at an event and I was volunteering and I saw him, and I was kind of looking tattered and broken, right? Okay. I was looking like a mess that I was on the inside, my experience. And he just recognized me, and I started talking to him, and I told him about my story. And I think it was kind of like, people were there with their dads, or it was like father. I don't know what it was, but he was like, come on. So he grabbed my hand to take me out, to show me to the world, right? Like to show me off. And I pulled back, and I just pulled it back, and I ran. And then he was like, what was that about? Yes. And I got closer and closer until I got to the stairs. And then he got escorted to go back on stage to sit down, because I guess it was like an intermission. And then I walked up to the stage, and I was like, Mr. Harvey. I said, Mr. Harvey. And I said, I said, can I explain something? Can I explain why I left? And he was like, yeah, like you going, and he came, they said, no, she all right. He said, no, you going to explain, like, why did you leave? Like, why did you leave? And he came down to me, and I think I said something out, and then he just, when I tell you, he just embraced me. He just hugged me and embraced me. And it was a feeling of your love, like, it's okay. Yes. You don't have to worry. I have you. You're protected. It was like, it was one of those embraces. And I just buried my face in his chest and was crying.
I can totally understand why.
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. So he was my pseudo father in this dream, right?
Yes.
He gave me what I didn't get. And so then, because I said, I recognize this feeling, like this feeling of just, like when, something's okay, you're like, oh,
yeah,
like I don't have to carry this any longer. Like you
Such
have
a release.
It's a release. And I remember in a couple of the guys I was dating, and like when I would finally get the courage so they can understand me, to like tell them and that's that vulnerability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, I think I can trust you with this information. At the end of the day, I couldn't, but, but I can trust them with this information.
Yeah.
And so then once they, get to a point, and then they like, okay, really don't know what to do with it. And then they might put their arm around me, or I might get to sink in their arms. And then I remember that feeling of like,
yep.
Okay, you got me. Like, I don't have to worry, because and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been seeking that. Apparently I've been seeking that.
Yes.
So I got it. So now I'm like, okay, I already got it. So now anyone else, it's not. So now if anyone puts an arm around me or they embrace me, it's just a hug or an embrace or whatever. It's not that seeking or that validation that I was searching for, because I received it already.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
What an insight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Mm-hmm. It was kind of weird, but it took me a few days to really like piece it all together. And I was like, okay.
Beautiful epiphany.
That was something subconsciously. Remember I said I was asking for anything subconscious to come out, and that's what that was. So now I have a different perspective and relationship wise with the opposite sex now. So I'm like, okay, all right. I don't need that validation from you. So I really don't need it from you.
That's awesome.
I got it.
That's so good.
I didn't even realize that I did. So you have to get.
Well, sometimes we need those moments to enlighten ourselves as to the path that we're on and what we have been seeking. And certainly for me, I mean, I provide my artistic services in many different ways. I work very intuitively, and my journey started when I didn't feel that I had the ability to actually speak what had happened to me and my journey. Mm-hmm. And so I found and discovered on my own, when I let myself go and I let myself be in that process, and I learned to trust the process, no matter what the fear was that I thought of what would come out. Like you said, that hurt that I knew was there, I knew it was bubbling, I knew it was going to come out. I was able to use my artwork and my creativeness to put it out in front of me. And that allowed me, a little bit like your dream, it allowed me the opportunity to sit with that for time, however much time that required. Right. And in that process, I could then look at it, be with it, put it away, come back to it, and discover at each different sitting or viewing or spending time of being with it, discover more meaning, because it came from that intuition, it came from that deep place inside me. Right. And what I discovered was one of my superpowers is allowing to be able to do that for other people. And so a lot of the commission work that I've done, a lot of that is feeling that connection and interpreting it in my intuitive way and presenting pieces of artwork for people. I really have two amazing images in my head actually already from what we've discussed. I have witnessed so many times the power of a piece of artwork that has been done for you, about your journey, about your defining moments, about your truth. and how important it is to have that, to be able to look at every day, to remind yourself
now
of
you're gonna
where
make me
you've
cry.
been, how far you've come. Well, and that's because it touches you somewhere, because we have this connection. We've created this connection, and that's the level of energy I operate off. And through all of my trauma, I would never have allowed myself to discover that had I not gone through what I went through. And this is what the WhyMe series is all about.
That's true.
This is why I have. It took me time, Carolyn, and it took my body a lot of time, because it was so unwell. I had started this process so many times in my last 18 years. I'd started the process so many times and been forced to stop. I'd been forced to walk away from my businesses. I'd been forced back into poverty with the inability to keep my body going. I nearly died so many times, and I knew. And this is what I know that you understand. It's that knowing. I knew that I was here for a much bigger purpose for many people. And this is why. And I'm making these incredible connections with people like yourself from across the globe.
I know.
And being able to operate in my superpower, it is so life-giving, not to myself, but to everybody I connect with. This is such an important podcast series. The messages need to get out there. Everyone's stories need to be out there. So many people, the potential for touching so many people in life, for them to feel, now I think I can talk. And I have all sorts of backgrounds of people that I'm interviewing. I've lost count, to be honest. So instead of, I've learned to harness that power, because instead of putting out that vulnerable energy, I'm putting out who I am for the first time. And I only started doing this in February, actually putting out there who I am and realizing, I know, and February was the point. Actually, it was March, because I couldn't change my name within 60 days. So the end of March was the first time that I actually put my real name out on Facebook and cut that final tether of worry from my ex-husband. And so I feel unleashed in a huge way.
Oh, big time.
And this is why I'm making these beautiful connections with people and allowing people to understand. And look, that trust thing, when people actually get to connect with me like this, it's a little bit different in the challenge. But when people get to one-on-one connect like this, that's where they feel that complete transparency, trust, and can actually get it.
And you're right, and I get it. Let me share this with you. So
please.
So in the midst, because you're healing. You're healing right now.
Yes.
And so this is helping you heal.
Yes.
And the reason why I know that to be true is because my blog. Oh, that's why I forgot to tell them my blog. The it's magnifyyouressence.wordpress.com. That was my dumping ground, right? That was the beginning. Now it's still a Mod Podge, and it's like it's my Chia Pet blog, and I leave it that way on purpose. Like I have the domain, but I leave it that way on purpose, because it doesn't have to be perfect.
No, it doesn't. Correct.
It doesn't have to be perfect. Because that was my healing. I went anonymous.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't have my name on it, didn't have my face on it. I didn't have anything on it. Like, I was just like, I'm telling my story. I don't know why am I. And I found, like I said, at this time, I found this book I was looking for, because I was always journaling and writing. And I was looking for a certain thought that I had years ago. And I was like, I got to find where I wrote this. Universe heard me. And then the other day, it was like, I was like, oh, what's this book? And I was like, oh, here it is. Found it,
Love
right?
That.
Put my hands right on it. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as I'm looking through, I found what I was looking for, but then I also found more. I found, because it was a journal that I wrote, it was a book that I was using in 2014, and it was all my thoughts around the time of the court case with my dad, me.
Right.
And just reading, and it was a time where I was in a I guess an entanglement. I guess that's what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
A situation. I don't know what it was. Situationship. It wasn't a relationship. I was just in something.
Okay.
And I got to the point where, because that was in there where I was like, this is going. Because at that point I had already found out about what was happening. So I was in the process of trying to figure this out. So I did attach myself to something that I didn't need to, just to cope. And then, I got to a point where I was like, okay, no. Then I started doing my empowerment stuff, and I started feeling so much better. That made me feel better than the other stuff that I thought was making me feel better. Right. And so I was like, okay, this has to go because this doesn't match me, but this does. Yeah. So now I'm going to gravitate to this. And I was still healing. I was still in a process of healing. And I'm out there and I'm just showing up, even though I just like, you're still showing up, even though you're still hurt, but you're still showing up. And that's the power, because that was me back in 2013 and 14, when I started doing my blogs and started doing my empowerment events and just showing up and just being of service, because helping others is what helped me. And then within that process, then I dove into now, same thing, like sharing my story. And I was thinking too, I know exactly who I can connect you with so you can interview next. I'm going to make sure I'm going to connect you to.
Yes, please. I would enjoy that. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. But your journey it's like you said, there's so much similarity, and I can wholeheartedly relate, because I remember that place and space, and you just keep going. And then that's why I think that's probably why people are like, well, how do you talk about the stuff like this? Because this is what I retrained my brain to do, right?
Correct.
Like, okay, that's still happening. I can't change that, but I can change how I feel going forward. Like, I know the difference between, I know what that feels like, and I don't choose that anymore. That felt mucky. I don't like that. Yeah. I choose this. So, and even though this is unknown, I'd rather still go over here with the unknown, because it has to be a heck of a lot better than what I already knew. So, and that's what just keeps me to allow to keep going. And I'm going to say that to you too, for you to keep going, for you to just keep going into the unknown and just doing it anyway. Like, just like what you're doing, and just, you're stepping into, like you say, your superpower, you're stepping into your truth. And that's truly, that, like you said, when you become fearless, you become limitless. And that's where your truth really lies. And that's where your truth begins. I mean, you fill in the blank to where it begins. So that's somebody else's quote, but I added to the end. It's like, and that's truly where you fill in the blank begins. Yeah. Your freedom, your sanity, whatever, you know what I mean? So
I do.
So yeah, so you're on that journey. And so, like I said, I'm 7 years into my journey.
Yes.
So
which is wonderful. And I'm 7 years, what a pivotal moment. I know that when I first started this journey of healing, the art therapist said to me, it takes 7 years to recover. And I was like, okay. Yeah, that's fine. That seemed like a long time back then. Yeah. I'm now 18 years later, and yes, I recovered. However, I believe that the healing never stops, because we have that beauty of recognizing. And, I teared up when I was talking about touching other people, because for me,
I saw that.
Because for me, my story still touches me, and I will still often have tears running down my face.
Yeah, no, me too.
But my voice doesn't choke up as often.
Exactly. And, that's when you know it's like, okay, all right. Yeah. Becoming, you're still human. You're going to still feel like, I watch my film and I look at it in awe, like, cause that's my piece of work, right? Yeah. That's my piece of, when I look at it and I go, wow, like it still inspires me. And, and when I say the healing, that 7 years into healing, that's 7 years into healing publicly.
Yes.
That's what I meant by publicly, because we were always healing. Yes. We were always healing. And that's what got us to this point. But now it's like, okay, now it's time to be public with this and really share. And like I said, so I do understand that space of like, I don't know, but I don't know about this. Like, how people going to view me and judge me. And, because I wore that mask very well, right? Because I had that facade. I had things, on paper, my existence, everything looked great. I had the degrees, I had the pretty decent job, I owned my own home, my son was at one of the top universities in the world. And, you know, like I'm serving on boards. I'm really, you know, living
Yeah.
the life, right?
Yeah.
But yet I'm broken inside.
Yeah. It's
I'm
such
all
a,
polished on the outside, but I'm a broken
yeah.
mess on the inside.
Yeah. And look, I'd love to know what you think about that situation of having essentially two different worlds, because for me, I used to think like we talk about having tracks in our brain, you know, and then we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about the habits and we can talk about rewiring and all of that. But I
Right.
used to think for me, whenever I had a flashback physical reaction to something, and it was not usually something specific. It was something that was actually completely irrelevant, and quite often, it. I still don't understand why, and I've stopped wondering why because it actually doesn't matter. But it was quite often if I was just in a space, and like
Uh-huh.
there might be a little speck of just a black speck or just something interrupting that space. And that would trigger me into a full on bodily reaction of shutting down. And it still happens. And it happened to me a
Wow.
couple of weeks ago. And I felt the dread, because for me it comes in a feeling of dread. I felt the dread come over me, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt my body start closing in and my vision started going black. And I just sat there, as I do these days, and I closed my eyes and I said, Vera, you are okay. Vera,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to understand this. You just need to breathe through it, open your eyes, look at what's around you, and know that you are always going to be on this journey and that that's okay. And basically for me, then I was out of it. So the whole thing probably only took 15 seconds or something. But the weird thing is, I used to say to people, sometimes I wonder if it's the act of remembering. So it doesn't even have to be remembering anything to do with the trauma. It's the fact that I'm physically using that pathway to remember something, that it then triggers a response. And I know I brought this up with my sexual assault counselor at one point, and of course she didn't have an answer. And I don't know that there is an answer, but I would love to know what you think about that, because for me it's all usually been when I'm in my waking state, different when I'm asleep
Mm-hmm.
and my subconscious has full reign, and then I get all the graphic stuff. However, when I'm conscious, you know what I mean?
All the graphic stuff,
Yeah, all the
right?
graphic stuff. So, but when I'm conscious, it's usually unrelated stuff that sets me off, which I find
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. And that was how I sort of was wondering, is it simply that feeling I get attached to remembering something using that part of my brain?
Oh yeah, that's that amygdala. That's that part back here.
Yeah,
That fight or flight. That's our survival instinct.
yeah,
That's what kicks in. So,
yeah,
and it's like your body, you know, we have our bodies have muscle memory. Our
yes,
brain has brain memory. Our feelings have
yes,
feeling memory.
yes,
So, you know, that whole scenario with me and, you know, flipping out because I thought someone broke into
yes.
you know, had nothing to do with had maybe it did now as I'm talking to you.
Okay.
That had nothing to do with sexual abuse,
Yeah.
had nothing to do with domestic violence, but I think it did subconsciously
Tell me.
because my situation was my door was kicked into by
Ah,
my abuser, broke in,
right,
broke in while I was here,
right. There you go.
and then remove things from my
Right,
house.
right. Oh my goodness, you've just helped me to work out what it is.
Mm,
You just came to that epiphany, and at the same moment,
yeah.
I've just realized what mine was.
Wow.
Do you want me to share? It's a little bit graphic,
Sure.
but
Okay.
okay. So I don't know if you've seen in that WhyMe challenge. I'm not sure if you've seen the video where I talk about the first time where I stopped breathing, which was when I was sodomized for the first time. I don't know if you've
Mm-mm,
seen that one or not. Okay.
mm-mm,
So I talk about how that situation came about and the immense pain and, the physical side of that action. But then I also talk about how I shut down, and that was the first time that I fully disconnected from who I was in order to survive that intense level of pain, both
mm-hmm,
emotionally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just realized why it happens, because most of the time when I'm in that space of nothing, it's in a toilet. And I've just realized that after that moment happened, the first thing I did was run to the toilet and sit there for hours. Hours. And that we didn't have pictures or anything in there. It was just 3 walls that I was looking at. 2 walls and a door that was plain. So I've just realized that's why that happens to me. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
See the power of sharing.
The power of sharing. Yeah. And then you get that, because I felt that in my spirit. It was like, oh, I was like, oh my gosh, she got something. Like, even I got something. I was like, wait a minute. Because once again, things are subconscious, right?
Yes, that's right.
Like, because I always say, I'm like, that ain't got nothing to do with anything. So why did I flip out over that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, the door was open. Could have been, I don't know. And I just panicked. Of course, with all the other stuff that was embedded in my head, right? Because that's what abusers do. They embed stuff in your head,
they
right?
Do.
So we're just wired that way. It's very complex. It's so complex.
It is.
But I know I'm complex, and that's it. I know,
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, intellectually, I look at myself and I say, well, it does keep life interesting unpacking some of these things, because I understand too that throughout that period when I was my most confused and lost, and I was my most disconnected to myself, there were many events that my family would talk about that I didn't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And as time's gone by, I've remembered a lot of things that I'd forgotten about, that I'd pushed aside, that I couldn't deal with at the time in my own mind. I said, can't deal with that too much, package it away. So it's an interesting process, this unpackaging, this unlayering, working through this process of getting to ourselves, because there are so many things that our brain holds that we're not consciously aware of. And it can be really interesting. For me, I am a very visual person, so a lot of the time it's like watching a movie. So the movie reel just starts and I go, so that's what happened. But
okay, I get it now, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Very interesting.
And to explain, my camera is here, up there, and then you're down here. So that's why I keep doing this.
That's okay. Yes.
And I'm like, and I have this bright light in front of me, so I'm staring in the camera, but the light. So I'm like,
right, and without your glasses,
and without my glass. Wait a minute, Vera. Okay, we're gonna leave. We've had this conversation already before.
Yeah.
We literally we had this conversation before. I'm really serious. We've already had this conversation before.
I know.
When you said that, it was just like, okay, we did this already. Like, the exact conversation we had.
Yeah.
This stuff keeps happening, man. We already know each other, Vera.
We do.
We already had this conversation.
We do. So. Well, this is why we both just had that epiphany about ourselves at the same time, because we have that connection. Yeah.
Right.
How amazing is that?
Extremely amazing. Because I always say, I'm like, that makes no sense. But that's how I knew that this is this complex stuff, and how it just can trigger you, and it could just do its own thing. And I couldn't stop it. I really couldn't. But I was like, but I remember looking. I said, Dad, they ate the candy. They took everything out I remember looking at it. I said, well, the sheets look different. I was literally scanning the room. I stood in the room long enough to scan the room to identify what the stuff looked like, and identified that it did not look like my room. But I also identified there was no bags in it. I was like, but there's no bags in here. Like, the rational brain would have been like, oh, dang, well, whose room is this?
Yes.
But that other crap back there said, but where's your bags? And I was like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, my bags are gone. Like, and then I went into like full blown panic mode. Yeah. I went into what was the lady? She was I can't remember her name. She was in the Olympics. She was the aborigine. I turned into her.
Kathy Freeman.
Yeah, Kathy Freeman. I turned into Kathy Freeman through the hotel,
Just
through the
gone
lobby.
out of there.
I was gone. I was out of there. I was running. I was like,
Yeah.
call the police, like it was that bad. It was that bad.
Yeah, I
call
get
the
it.
police, call the police. I went into panicky mode. And and that's the symbolism behind it. You know what I mean? Like the symbolism behind it. That's the only thing, just having the door kicked in and door was open, you know what I mean? And now I'm not safe. And it's, you could probably unlayer that, unpackage it in so many different ways, right? Not feeling, and then what happened after that? Watch this. What happened after that? Because my room, the adjacent door was a room that was still being fixed because they had just had the hurricane. So they were fixing the room next to us. So there was workers always coming in and out. So that door kept being open. So now I'm paranoid.
Yes.
Now I'm like, is the door shut? I'm making sure the door is shut. And now I say, why is that door open? Who's going to be in here? Like I got
hyper vigilant.
I got real hyper vigilant, which is that survivor thing that kicks in for survivors, right?
Yeah.
When after you leave your situation, now you're like, okay, what is that? Like, are they looking? Are they going to jump out the bush? Like seriously, like you start getting into this mode, and that's what happened the rest of the vacation. Especially when I went to my room, I was like, make sure the door was shut, and then it got to the point where that other door was open, and they had it cracked so they can let the air out because it was like it was like the mold and the mildew because they had just had a hurricane.
Yeah.
So it was the island. So that was in Punta Cana. So it just had that smell of plaster and, while they were trying to paint. So they had the door cracked so it can air out. But that cracked door was scaring me because I didn't know who was in there that could possibly jump out. So I kept shutting it, and then it kept opening, and I'm like, why they keep opening the door? I'm like, who was down here? Who was back here? Who's in my room? Like now I was panicky the whole time. I was panicky. And that's what happens. We go into this other realm. The rational side just kind of escapes, and you can easily go, as I say, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs just that quick. And I have to tell people, and I sometimes have to laugh at myself. See, now I can laugh at it because I'm like, oh, okay, that happens every now and then. Not often, but it could. So, but you got to understand, it could. And it's
it could. And that's, I think, the thing that a lot of us survivors learn to live with, the fact that at any moment it could happen. So
at any moment it could happen.
Yeah, and that's something that people who haven't experienced that don't understand. I know for me, a lot of the comments I'm getting, particularly on this interview series, is my energy is very calming and very trusting. And
it is.
Thank you. And
I think I went to sleep on one of your lives. I turned your live on because we're different time zones. And I turned it on. I had my earbuds in and I fell asleep. So you might want to record some meditation messages or something.
Yes. Well, I actually
you have that. You definitely have a calming, and it worked because it put not because I was bored. It was that I was that calm and that relaxed. Where it literally, I was like, I just dozed off. Like, oh.
Well, I actually do have a visualization. It's like 20 minutes or something in the group. So go and check it out. Maybe tonight when you go to sleep. I don't mind if you fall asleep to it. But I have a whole series of those.
I got to try that again. Yeah.
Try it
perfect. Again. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yes. So proud of you. So proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm so honored to be on your podcast as well.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. I'm just like so soft. Like I'm like, you guess what, you guys? I was in Australia today.
Yeah, that's it.
I was in Australia. I'm an Aussie.
Yep. Claim it.
I'm an Aussie for the day. I'm an Aussie for the moment. Yep. So it's now. I think I caught up to you. It's tomorrow now.
Oh, yes. Yep.
See, when I talked to you, it was yesterday.
It was. Yeah, now we're now in the same reality, not the future.
So now we're in the same reality. It's 12. It's 12:20 a.m. So now technically it's tomorrow, but since I never went to sleep, it's still today.
It is. Yes, isn't that?
I never went to sleep. Yeah, it's still though it's tomorrow. It's technically it's tomorrow, but my brain operates. It's still today.
That's right.
So it's the 26th. Is it 8:22 there, or is it 8:23? Like the date.
22nd of August.
The 22nd of August. Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. You guys do it reverse.
We do it backwards.
We're the only ones that no, we do it backwards. The rest of the world does things right. Clearly based on what's happening, we do things backwards. That's why we're still in quarantine over here. So,
we're in quarantine here too.
We didn't get the ding, you're free to move about the world yet. You know, when you're in the they say ding, you're free to move about the cabin. We never got the ding, we're free to move around the world yet. Like we're still, so you guys are still in quarantine too?
We're still in quarantine. I don't think our international borders are going to open until at least 2022. They're saying maybe 23. I have been in isolation myself since mid-March. About the 14th of March, I've been in isolation. I, being in the high risk category, I don't even get to walk around the supermarket anymore. I am stuck here and I'm making the most of it.
well, this is why we're connecting this
That's
way.
Right.
There we go. Making memories. So.
That's it. Like, I've just gone to my connections in a different way. I've used a different format, and to be honest, it's wonderful.
I'm going to have to figure out how to like put you like on like one day we do a Facebook call and I'll drive around so you can see outside. Like,
I'd love that.
take you through a virtual tour of Philadelphia.
I'd love that. You'll definitely have to do that. For sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I wish you well for your next interview and, kind of debrief and, and it's going to go well. And thank you so much. And I can't wait.
In my experience and talking to many friends and colleagues throughout the years, one thing that we have all come to the same conclusion about is that you often get to a certain point in your life where you really start questioning what it is that you stand for. What is it that really makes you happy? And what do you really want to get out of this life? What legacy do you want to leave? And underpinning all of that is the realization of who you are now and who you want to be. Having clarity in these areas helps you to step into your true potential. And so if you would like the opportunity for a free discovery session with myself to see if mentoring and coaching would help you so that you can really step into your true potential, you can do so at WhyMeMovement.com. You will also find there that you can subscribe to the newsletter to keep up to date with all the news, special offers and products as they are released, as well as some behind the scenes information about some of our wonderful guests and who you can look forward to listening to in the upcoming episodes. Please remember, if you enjoy this content, to rate and subscribe. And, of course, share along with your friends in social media and let them know what a fantastic podcast this is so that they too can enjoy this content that we bring to you for free.